Just yesterday, we talked about Roman Harper's concerns for the University of Alabama. And even though they are always and very valid, I think the University of Alabama has a way to get through them. However, Roman Harper just didn't stop there. He talked about his concerns for the University of Florida, and it happens to be the quarterback position, which is my biggest question. And to solve that question, Quarterback Spotlight is back with us today to talk about and to look at the quarterback position battle that will be taking place at the University of Florida. And this is going to be one of the most decisive and interesting quarterback battles in all of the nation when you talk about replacing Kyle Trask. Before we get into it, as always, y'all know the drill. I want to hear from y'all. Hop down in the comments and let me know who you think is going to start for the University of Florida. Is it Emory Jones? Is it Anthony Richardson? Let us know what you're thinking. As always, subscribe to the channel. I'm on my push to 5,000, but don't just stop there. Go subscribe to Quarterback Spotlight's channel. He is doing awesome content on a daily basis, and you don't want to miss it. I'm going to pass it over to him now to give a quick shout out to his channel.
Yeah, appreciate you, Ty. Yeah, so just as like Ty said, today we'll be diving into the Florida quarterback situation, which just to reiterate, excuse me, what Ty said is it's one of the most fascinating battles in all of college football. For the simple fact, in my opinion, Dan Mullen is the orchestrator of the quarterbacks there. So one, I'm excited to get into it, but two, if you have any interest in diving into more quarterback specific talk or watching kind of game film and seeing how we break down game film, please give us a subscription to our channel. We actually have a Florida video breakdown of Emory Jones that came out earlier this week. So after you are interested, after you dive into this one, feel free to go over to our channel and kind of check that out. But yeah, Tom, I'm excited to get into it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing, y'all, hop down in the comments because as y'all know, I've been interested in looking at the NFL and the NFL draft. And I'd be very interested in talking to you about that. And if that's something y'all would like to see, hop down in the comments and let us know because both of us can talk about quarterbacks and football for days. But before we get too off topic there, let's talk Florida. And I know this is something you've been texting me about. We've both been very excited about, but I want to hear from you. Right now, where do you see this Florida quarterback battle?
So I see it, and again, this is from obviously the outside looking in, right? We just have some articles coming out, but I see it as Emory Jones's job to lose. Even if he has, let's say, a subpar spring practice, I still see him as getting the first snap from fall rolls around with Anthony Richardson kind of right behind him. I'm a big fan of Emory Jones, and I think Anthony Richardson has a lot of raw talent, but a lot of unknown as well. But I do think it's Emory Jones's job to lose right off the bat.
Yeah, and look, I think I mostly agree with that. I think Emory Jones is the safe pick at quarterback, and that's really one of Roman Harper's big things. And before we really break down the quarterback battle that's going to be ensuing, let's talk about how big it is replacing a guy like Kyle Trask. And we talked a little bit off air yesterday about how this wouldn't be as big of a deal if Eric Gilbert was able to stay at Florida because there's no better weapons for a new quarterback than a solid running back and a solid tight end. And though I'm going to be very honest, it's Florida. They're going to have a good tight end. It's a lot to replace Trask. And what do you see about this quarterback battle? And with these two individuals that get you excited for them to be able to find success in another loaded SEC?
So I think it's interesting because I think we're going to see Dan Mullen's magic, for lack of better terms, at work again because it's going to be a different system than it was last year. And last year, the system was fantastic for Kyle Trask, but you can't plug in Emory Jones and Anthony Richardson to run that same system, right? So I think we're going to revert back to the Nick Fitzgeralds, the early Dak Prescotts, even Tim Tebow and Dan Mullen had his imprint on there. So we're going to see a lot of kind of run design for the quarterback, but a lot of that RPO type scheme. And going back to your point, about why it's important to have a solid running game and a solid tight end. A lot of the RPO schemes, you want to kind of try to keep things compact. And the quickest point from A to B would be my quarterback on the ball to the tight end, right? If I'm pulling the ball and deciding to throw. So that's where the tight end, a good tight end becomes very important for that RPO scheme. But if we want to look at the tool sets, which I know you're going to jump into here in a second, I think they're similar, but I think the experience that Emory Jones has, and he's already been developed by Dan Mullen for a few years compared to Richardson's only been developed by Dan Mullen for 1 year. I think that could put Emory Jones ahead of Richardson, at least starting off.
Yeah, and now I want you to talk to me. What is it right now that you see out of Emory Jones that gets you excited? Because I've talked about Emory Jones, and while I think that he is going to have a good year, I've had plenty of SEC fans say, "Look, Emory Jones is a solid quarterback, but is he going to be able to contend with Georgia in the SEC East?" I don't know that you have to have a successful season, but what is it in his ability in particular that gets you excited?
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, Florida fans and SEC fans can't compare him to Kyle Trask. Trask put up huge numbers, and while Jones may not put up those same type of numbers, if his running ability is what we think it is, that could offset those big passing yards that Trask kind of put out. But I like the creativity that Dan Mullen will be able to make around Emory Jones. There's a lot of different packages that will be tough to defend. If you go back and look at some of the film from Emory Jones's previous years, and with Dan Mullen kind of designing and schematically putting Emory Jones in a situation that puts the defense in a bad situation, puts the defense off balance, that that you can't do with a Kyle Trask just because of the lack of mobility. So Emory Jones's skill set as a runner is going to open up things, but I think he's going to be a deceivingly good passer as well. He's got a quick release, he's got a stronger arm than people think, and whenever people have judged his passing ability the past few years, it's been in like mop up situations. It's been in packages or game plans that weren't made for him to begin with, right? So now that he has a full game plan, a full week to prepare for him as a starter, I think we'll see some improvement as a passer, and I think we're actually going to see some really good things as a passer. But I'm optimistic about Emory Jones, but again, it's early. But you can probably hear my voice. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, and to your point, I think one of the things that I really started to notice was a lot of the packages that Emory Jones was asked to come in and run and then even throw out of. It was very obvious that the basis of the package was to sell the quarterback run or the possibility of the quarterback run, and then they might pass out of it, but that's not the most effective passing situation all the time, and Dan Mullen won't be running that all the time. Now, talk to me about Anthony Richardson, because we were talking a little bit before this, and I'm really interested in him. He's a green guy, but I think he's got a ton of upside. What do you see out of him?
Yeah, so I agree. I think he's got a ton of upside. I just think he's so raw, and of course, I haven't seen any practice film of him, just his high school film, and it showed his raw ability that he has. And he has a similar tool set to Emory Jones. He's probably a little bit bigger, not as athletic, but can probably put his head down and get some extra yards if he needs to. But I think it all depends on how he develops under Dan Mullen. And I know you're pretty bullish on him, and I'm excited to hear kind of why. Not that I'm not bullish on him. I just think Emory Jones is ahead of him right now. But I think if Richardson can develop under Mullen, then man, if you have Emory Jones for 2 solid years and Richardson for 2 solid years, or whatever it may be, then Florida fans could be in a good situation. Now that's best case scenario.
Yeah, no doubt. If we're talking best case scenario, Florida fans have to be ecstatic at the prospect of either of these guys, because what you didn't have last year was a consistent running game. And right, I had a bunch of people tell me maybe that doesn't matter so much, but at the end of the day, I think you add in a running game to Florida, and some of those games they lose, you're looking at completely differently. But the reason I'm kind of bullish on Anthony Richardson is, one, Dan Mullen, right? We've talked about that. But two, there's a brand new quarterback coach in town in Garrick McGee. Garrick McGee was the offensive coordinator for Arkansas Razorbacks in 2011 when Arkansas fielded the 17th best offense in college football. Now, that's nothing to snuff at, considering that's the time period where Alabama had that vaunted defense, LSU had that vaunted defense. To be a 17th best offense in the nation playing an SEC schedule is impressive. The quarterback, Ryan Mallett, at the time. The reason why that gives me hope for Richardson is because it's a new face at the quarterback coach position. It's going to be an entirely new scheme coming from Kyle Trask. So it's not like you have a continuation in scheme that Emory Jones will just be plug and play. Theoretically, to your point, they're both so similar schematically that either one of these guys fits the new scheme, and now we have a new quarterback coach. I think the two things that I think that Richardson has in play for him, I think that he might have a higher ceiling. Whether he ever gets there or not, that remains to be seen, because Emory is much more ready now, to your point. But two, his size and the way he plays reminds me of someone you said, and that's Nick Fitzgerald.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you think? Do you think a new quarterback coach, along with a brand new system, does that matter that much? That was something I was curious about before we started.
That's a good and very thoughtful, interesting question for sure. And I think yes, and at the same time, I think it would matter more if it was a different head coach, right? If it wasn't Dan Mullen, because he's definitely going to have his imprint, his hand on everything, right? So, but to your point, I think now that Trask is gone, there's going to be more the not gadget play, but that small package that Emory Jones had when he would come in. That small package, for lack of better terms, is now going to be the full offense, right? They're not going to have a small package for Emory Jones to learn. He's learning the full offense now. What I could potentially see and envision is, okay, maybe that small package now goes to Anthony Richardson. He still gets some playing time. He's in that short yardage. Well, Emory Jones can perform that. Now Emory Jones is in a different scheme potentially, right? Like the same scheme, but used differently. Not that he's being used as Kyle Trask, but now he's the guy, and so we want him to be healthy. So if we're going to do a gimmicky or gadgety package, we're bringing in Anthony Richardson. Does that kind of answer the question or kind of go?
Yeah, no, I think that makes perfect sense, to be honest. And that's something I could very realistically seeing happen, especially out of Dan Mullen. And especially when you look at how they lined up Anthony Richardson. And when you watch his high school film, I believe it was against Oklahoma, they lined him up as a wide receiver. And if you look at his high school film, he was catching touchdowns, serious touchdowns at wide receiver.
Yeah.
And running serious routes. Like, I was blown away watching his high school film at how smooth he is. And I think that's kind of where I think he could have a real shot, especially because something we talked about last night, how proficient Dan Mullen has been at developing the quarterback position, specifically to his scheme. And now you get in a guy who might be that raw, but with so many big body similarities, I think it would be interesting. My questions now have to turn to, what is your biggest area of improvement for Emory Jones for him to really lock this down? Because before I pass that off, the one area I saw, one throw he would do would be jaw dropping. I mean, a touch ball that is just sailing right in, and you couldn't ask for it any better. But it was the ability to replicate that. And that probably goes into scheme. Like we said, it's harder to throw a nice ball when you're trying to sell out the run. But what's your biggest areas of needed improvement for Emory Jones?
No, I think you actually hit it. So I'm going to kind of run with what you just said, but I don't think it was his fault necessarily last year, because the situations he was getting put into, he would maybe play 6 plays a game, run for 4, throw for 2 or something, right? And then even like the mop up duty was towards the end. So now that he has the ability to prepare for a game, to prepare as the starter, knowing I'm getting 80-90% of the reps, and let's say Richardson's coming in for some packages, so now he has the ability to be more complete and to replicate good throw after good throw, or it won't be as obvious, because let's say he had 4 throws in a game, 2 good, 2 bad. Well, now you're thinking, oh, he's pretty inconsistent. But let's say he had 30 throws in a game, 22 good, 8 kind of whatever. You're like, okay, that's a pretty good completion percentage. You're not necessarily thinking about the bad throws that are there. So I think but that's a double-edged sword. So the more reps will show, okay, he can replicate it, or maybe he can't. But in my opinion, I think he's going to, just because of Dan Mullen. I'm such a big believer in Dan Mullen. Regardless who's under center week 1, I think they're going to have good production from the quarterback position.
Yeah, and 2 points to that. One, I completely agree about Dan Mullen. He has been nothing short of spectacular in his capacity to put together a deadly offense, right? We can talk about some of the strange things Mullen does, and that's a different conversation. But if we're just speaking strictly to X's and O's and the ability to put together a ruthless offense, my God, he's up there with the best of them. And the second one, I think we both agree that Emory Jones has the tools to be able to be the successful guy, right? Like, he's got the good footwork, a compact release. He's got a quick release, and it looks good. It's not like he's throwing the ball and you're like, God, this release is broken, but it's getting there. Everything looks the part. So last thing before we go, who's your guy? I think I already know the answer, but just to go ahead and get it out the way, who's your pick to win this starting job?
Emory Jones, and that's just because I believe in him so much. And that's not that I don't believe in Richardson. I just think Jones is ahead. And another thing that kind of makes me think, with Jones being there for a few years and Dan Mullen being who he is, if Dan Mullen didn't think Emory Jones was the guy in this kind of transfer portal day and age, I think he would have gotten a guy from the transfer portal. But that's just me. I want to hear your thoughts now.
Yeah, look, I think that's a really good point. And I'd even made a video a while back positing whether or not he should reach out to Joe Milton in the transfer portal because of the big body type Nick Fitzgerald. And he has that in Richardson. And I'm going to agree, but I think I'm going to agree to a lesser degree. And the reason is because I agree that Emory Jones is ahead. I believe he's further ahead, and I think he has all the tools to get it done. I do think that Anthony Richardson is going to make this a little bit more of a race than most people are expecting. And I actually wouldn't be surprised week one, like I texted you last night after watching him. I wouldn't be all that surprised if he trotted out his quarterback one week one, right?
Mhm.
It would be shocking, but not as shocking as I think some people would believe.
Fair. Yep.
Yeah, look, and the fun thing about this, man, is as these videos come out, y'all, we are going to be revisiting them throughout the spring, throughout A-Day. So after these A-Days, after more information comes out from these camps, Quarterback Spotlight and I are absolutely going to be sitting down, revisiting this, where we were right, where we were wrong, because we just enjoy talking football. And what quarterback video are we going to be doing next so that the people have something to look forward to?
So I think it's going to be LSU, right?
I think LSU, I think that's an intriguing battle right there. I mean, that's a really interesting one, and it will have a huge implication on the SEC.
Big, because if they get production at the quarterback position, watch out. They're back to maybe contending for the West, right? So
they have the talent. I mean, they're easily one of the most top 5 talented teams in the nation. So
yep. And their young receivers were dudes last year. People,
oh my Lord.
They're gonna be better, but yeah, I won't talk too much yet.
Yeah, that's gonna be an exciting one. Y'all, thank you so much. As always, if you enjoyed this video, like, comment down below, but don't just stop here. Go over to Quarterback Spotlight's YouTube channel and subscribe to him, because he is giving incredible content on a very consistent basis, and you will absolutely see him here again on this channel. With all that, thank you, and we'll see you next time.